this turned a pessimistic Game of Thrones fan back onto Game of Thrones, back into House of Dragon.
And I'm sure you're not alone. There's a lot of other people who I'm sure feel exactly the same right now.
I'm willing to say it. Game of Thrones is back. It is back.
Yeah.
I was not willing to say that. Episodes 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 9. I wanted to see how the season ended. It ended great. Game of Thrones is back. Welcome back, everybody. This is Two to Ramble. I am Austin.
I'm Richard.
Wait a second. What are you doing here?
I'm here for the podcast.
Well, Richard, this is a
We're
house.
here every week.
No. I don't think you understand. This is a House of the Dragon episode.
Yeah, why can't I be a part of it?
Richard, I don't think you watched House of the Dragon.
I watched clips on YouTube.
Get out. Get out. Everybody, this is Jordan. You might see a familiar face here. He was with us in episode 1 when we gave you that review. Jordan, welcome back.
Good to be back.
Of course. Now, we just finished watching episode 10 of House of the Dragon, 30 minutes ago?
30 minutes, yeah.
So it's really fresh. And just if you could explain one feeling right now of this is how I feel about the season of House of the Dragon, what would you say?
Very satisfied.
I would say extremely satisfied.
Extremely satisfied, yeah.
And you know what's weird about that? If anyone remembers our ratings from episode 1, you gave it a soft 8. After episode 1 and 2, was it just episode 1?
Just one, yeah.
And I gave it a 6 something. I just want to get right into this before we even discuss further. Let's jump to rating. What would you rate the show right now after it's finished? Just so people understand how we're feeling about this.
Yeah, probably a 9.5. I'm up there.
Oh,
it was really that. I think I told you once it ended, I was like, "This, we're back to peak level Game of Thrones quality."
Holy,
where we were, with where it finished off.
9.5.
Yeah.
Okay, so I started at 6. Remember, I did the exact rating system here. Ended at an 8.9. So very high, very high regards. I love it, and I don't think we're alone here, because the reception's been pretty awesome. Have you noticed what the general feeling's been from people?
Yeah, definitely. It got a lot better. It felt like as the season went along, it seemed like post time jump, things really changed. And I think we'll talk about this more, but the first 5 episodes really felt like prologue looking back. It was good, but it was a lot of build up. And then once they do the time jump, some people are kind of upset about the casting decisions, which again, we'll get into.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual plot and where the story was going, it felt like that's where things kind of floored, and it got better and better and better, and the momentum built. And then those last, I'd say definitely episode 8, which was an amazing episode. Yes. And then this finale, amazing. Those 2 episodes I'd say were just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. And a lot more people are watching House of the Dragon because Game of Thrones had such huge momentum going into House of the Dragon. But season 1 of Game of Thrones averaged 9.3 million viewers per episode back in 2011. This last data I saw averaged 29 million. So many more people watching it. Obviously, there's a lot more momentum, like I said. But the Game of Thrones, the final season had 44 million viewers per episode. Do you think by the time House of Dragon has its run down, there's going to be 4 seasons, right? Do you think that it will reach Game of Thrones level viewership? Yeah,
because it seemed like more people were getting into it as it went along. I heard a lot more people discussing it just in general conversations these last few episodes. Definitely more than when it first came out. So I could definitely see a growing audience once word of mouth spreads that hey, here's some entertainment that's actually good quality art versus some of the other stuff that's just out there, the content that is out there in television. Because this is just more than just content. This is actual solid storytelling with characters and emotion that is missing in a lot of television right now.
Absolutely. And what do you think George R. Martin thinks about this season? Well, the author himself.
The author himself, I have a pretty good idea, because he wrote Paddy Considine, who plays Viserys.
Plays King Viserys.
King Viserys in the show, wrote him and said, "Your Viserys was better than my Viserys." And
George R. R. Martin said this.
George R. R. Martin texted him that after he saw the episode. And for an actor to be told that from the author, it must mean the world. And it's true. It really is true. Because the character in the books is different actually than the one in the show. The one in the show is obviously much more of a tragic figure.
Yeah.
Who he's torn between this just longing to have a loving family, around him, and to everyone just to sort of get along, and then the responsibilities, obviously, of being king and the issues around the succession. And in the books, he's dealing with similar issues, but it's played off more of him as being someone who doesn't really care. He just wants sort of, he wants the problems to kind of solve themselves, and he's kind of a drunkard. And so the character's a lot less tragic than it is in the show. And a lot of that, I think, actually does go to the acting. Obviously, the writing probably has a role in that. I'm sure that they drew up the character a little different and said, we want to explore it a little more. But his acting, oh my God, give him an Emmy for that. I mean, that was the most moving performance I would say I've seen in Game of Thrones, definitely since Peter Dinklage. I'd say and if Peter Dinklage can get an Oscar, I think, Emmy award, I think Patty Considine should get one too.
For playing King Viserys.
Yeah, it's such an emotional performance.
See, you notice everything you just did there has brought insight to the podcast. This is something that we don't get when Richard's sitting there. You see, so we just got some insight, some knowledge bombs just came. So I think people appreciate that. So Considine,
yeah.
Considine, the actor who plays King Viserys, got the text message from George R. R. Martin saying, "You literally played my character better than I wrote my own character." I'd cry. I don't know how he reacted.
There's no better compliment to an actor to hear
absolutely
that.
Not.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the big question then, before we get into the specifics of how we felt then, season 1 Game of Thrones versus season 1 House of the Dragon. It's just such a natural conversation. We got to have it. What do you think?
They're very different because obviously the main thing is the time jumps. Separate this from Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones did not have a lot of time in between episodes. It never had casting changes in the middle of the season.
They did between seasons, but not not in the middle, not at all.
Yeah, it was jarring to a lot of people. I know when in episode 6, a lot of people were turned off by the show. Actually, like I looked at it as I saw episode 6 as a positive turning point in terms of the plot, but a lot of people said, "Oh, we missed the old." Rhaenyra, we had gotten used to her.
Millie Alcock.
Oh,
yeah. I loved her as an actress. Oh, she was so
fantastic.
Good.
Yeah,
so good.
I really came around it because remember in the first podcast we had talked about her, and I said I wasn't really sure. She was. By the 3rd episode, I really had. I saw her as Rhaenyra, and losing her, it stunk. And I don't know how they could have kept her. I get it because by the last episode, her children, her sons are so much older. I get it. It would have been awkward for her to be acting with these people who are pretty much her age, playing her children. It would have been tough.
But man, I miss her.
Yeah, because she was great. So you have the time jumps that kind of make it structurally different from the first season of Game of Thrones. And I think, again, I talked about this in the first podcast. What this has going for it that the first season of Game of Thrones did not have is the world building. You could tell in that first season. Part of it's probably because of the budget. They're trying to figure out exactly what just the cities look like. What are people wearing? In terms of world building, that's a very important thing. So for a show to not really have its to not be sure exactly what everything looks like and what the sort of world looks like. It's I don't want to say it's a problem because it's just something you have to figure out, but that's an issue that this did not have because from the first episode, I really thought that this show had a very good picture of exactly what it looked like and what the world was, obviously because they had done 8 seasons of Game of Thrones before. Yeah. So it had that going for it.
Yeah, Game of Thrones is building a house. House of Dragons expanding a room.
Exactly, yeah.
Did you like that analogy, by the way?
That's a beautiful analogy.
Richard hates my analogies. God. Thank you so much. That's touching. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
okay. But yeah, so House of Dragons already has the house built. So they're adding like a sunroom, this and that, and they're doing such a great job with it. The thing that I have to commend House of Dragon for doing is there are not big battle sequences. There are not epic, you don't have a Battle of the Bastards. Neither did season 1 of Game of Thrones. But to me, tell me if you agree, but House of the Dragon is as if you took Game of Thrones, cut everything except for King's Landing, and just heighten the focus on all the politics and all the dialogue and all the intensity and all the character relationships.
Definitely. This is a lot more focused than Game of Thrones was.
Yeah, and for someone like me who King's Landing was my favorite portion of season 1. Mm-hmm. Some people may say like, oh, I like the Daenerys stuff, which is good, but King's Landing was the most interesting and integral part of the story. Yeah. And so this just emphasizes that, and I'm so glad that the show, at least for me, came around because I was really... I was one of those hesitant ones because Game of Thrones season 8 hurt me deeply. We know this. People know this. I know this. But this turned a pessimistic Game of Thrones fan back onto Game of Thrones, back into House Dragon.
And I'm sure you're not alone. There's a lot of other people who I'm sure feel exactly the same right now.
I'm willing to say it. Game of Thrones is back. It is back.
Yeah.
I was not willing to say that. Episodes 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 9. I wanted to see how the season ended. It ended great. Game of Thrones is back.
That's what shocked me most about this was it went from being a show that I thought was good.
Yeah.
The feelings that I had in that first episode were pretty much consistent through the first 5 episodes. I thought, like I said, it got better after the time jump. That 8th episode just took it to a new level, and then it did
8th episode, for those who don't know, that was the episode where King Viserys died.
King Viserys dies. Yeah,
yes.
It's the whole dinner scene, and there's the controversy over who's going to be the next heir of Dreadmark and Driftmark. Sorry, and then this finale was just fantastic, and they kept it at that level. So these last 3 episodes to me were like peak level Game of Thrones. And that, like I said, I love that this season, just 10 episodes went from being good to, in my opinion, great. It really did reach that level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, want to get into specific categories here, breaking down the show. The first one I want to throw by you, characters. How do you think the characters were? Were there any that you dislike? Any hot takes here with some criticism on characters, or is it generally very, very positive?
I wouldn't say there's any I dislike. I would not say they rise to the level of Game of Thrones in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have your favorites. Daemon, I think, is a fan favorite. No shocker there.
I love Daemon.
Aemon, I think, really by the end got to be a really great character too. I'm looking forward to seeing him in season.
Aemon, One Eye.
One Eye Aemon.
There are so many characters that I try to rremind myself. Okay, it's Aemon. There's Aemon and Aegon. There's the twins.
Hey, the succession crisis happens because of the confusion with wrong Aegon.
Yeah.
Wrong Aegon being the So obviously, even the show's acknowledging there that there's too many names that are the same and similar. But I think, and it's tough to judge Rhaenyra because you got 2 different actresses. Obviously, the first one we already said we loved. I think by the end I was on board with the second one.
I think I was on board with every character by the end.
Yeah,
there wasn't one that I thought did a bad job.
And that's what I'm saying. I don't think that there was one that I can point to and say that's a weak spot. There's no weak spot. It's just one of those things where it's like it's tough because Game of Thrones had that Tyrion character. It had Tyrion. It had Daenerys, early Daenerys. It had those wonderful characters, and it's tough, and it's only been 1 season, so we'll see. Maybe season 2, maybe some of the characters will go places there. But
if you don't mind me jumping in on that,
yeah.
If I noticed season 1 of Game of Thrones, as gray as all the characters were, there was still like that Peter Dinklage, a Jon Snow, the Starks. There were still clearly honorable people that you could really root for. In this season, it's even more gray.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's one character you can point out that doesn't legitimately have a serious flaw.
Oh, yeah, no.
Serious flaws. We're rooting for incest this whole entire show. It's nuts. That there are serious flaws with every character, no matter how good or bad they are.
Yeah.
It's nuts to me.
Well, you get that with Daemon. I mean, Daemon, you go from one scene, you're in love with him, and then the next he's doing something just absolutely horrible. And let's be honest, you're still kind of in love with him, but that's one of the things that makes Game of Thrones amazing. He gets stuff done.
He chops off heads.
He does.
That was so gory too.
Oh my God.
Multiple times. Let's jump right into cinematography. These characters, I think, are all good. Before we jump into that, actually, real quick, character-wise. Is there a top tier character for you? Viserys. King Viserys. I think we're in agreement. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, again, that I don't know what else can be said. Yeah, he was by far the most emotional character, and he really got me by the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so cinematography, the visuals of the show, beautiful. Beautiful.
Especially in the finale. The storm sequence was so well done.
The dragon bite as well. Ooh, with the storm sequence.
And the visual effects really... I would say I don't know if I want to say they got better because I don't think it's they're really, but yeah, the finale, the dragons were all just fantastic. There was not a single time where I looked and said that looks kind of fake. That looks like CGI. There had been a couple scenes of that earlier in the show, but that finale, in terms of the special effects, they sold it.
Yeah. And I think there was some game that the producers or the directors, whatever, were playing where drink every time there's a woman giving birth. because there must have been how many scenes throughout that. And the last scene was the miscarriage with Rhaenyra, and I was having trouble looking through the screen.
I looked away.
It's the cinematography is so gory and brutal and good. And again, it's nothing flamboyant. It's nothing too grand. It's just people speaking or people going through birth or just these real scenes. You're not getting your big battle sequences, and that's just so impressive to me.
Exactly. No.
And the music. What do you think about the music?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
But there's no shocker there.
No,
I mean,
no.
It's and I loved speaking of the music, Rhaenyra, I guess it's Rhaenyra's theme. I love. I don't know if it's coming to mind. Yeah, it plays sometimes. I know they played it. I think it's. I don't know if it's at all. If it plays at all in the first episode. I know they touched on it a couple times, and it's what's playing when she gets crowned.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm talking about, and it plays a couple more times in the episode, and it had played
Badass
previously.
scene,
But no. So the music is top notch, but again, no shocker there.
No shocker. What did you think then about the dialogue overall? Because you have read the book, correct?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So
I read.
You have now read the book.
Yeah.
So is the dialogue in the show similar to the book? Do they stay very true to it? Because from a standpoint of someone who hasn't read the book, the dialogue's like stellar. It's as if it's from George R. R. Martin himself.
Yeah.
So is that very accurate to the book?
It is very similar. I'd say it's more accurate than the dialogue from Game of Thrones, especially as the show went along. Because I think more and more you could tell watching Game of Thrones what was George R. R. Martin dialogue and what was D&D, and you could kind of tell the difference. It's not a knock against them; it's just they had a very distinct style of writing. Here, it felt pretty true to the books based on what I had read. I had sped read the books these past few weeks because I wanted to try and get in. And so, but yeah, no, I dialogue wise, I thought it was fantastic. There were times I remember in the last few seasons of Game of Thrones where I got really just taken out of scenes because of the dialogue.
Yeah.
Where it's just like they were literally repeating lines, and I literally
running out of lines.
Yeah, they were running out of, especially like season 8. Half the dialogue is just repeated lines from like characters just saying stuff that they had from previous seasons. And here, obviously, especially when they're planning out like the war in the final episode and they're around the table, that was all really well done because they have to try and tell the audience exactly what's going on without confusing them. Right. I thought they did a really good job of that.
And again, the cinematography, the fire beneath the map.
That was something we all were like, when that happened, it's like I said, like you gotta get one of those now.
Oh,
it's
on Amazon.
That's gonna be on Amazon tomorrow. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now with the trouble that Game of Thrones had was they were adapting an entire entire book into a season, which is typical. Whereas, if I'm understanding this correctly, this book is being adapted into 4 seasons. This one book is turning into 4 seasons.
Exactly.
So it seems like you will have a lot of time to delve into mostly everything that's in the book, making this like a very, very close adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. At least that's what George R. R. Martin said. He said he wants 40 episodes total. I could say there's probably enough for that. They might try and add some stuff here and there.
Okay.
But yeah, based on where I'm reading at, they're on track for 4 seasons.
Awesome. Yeah. So then, plot wise, should we expect any more time jumps?
No, I think they're done.
If I start losing more of characters, I swear.
The time jump really was. I think those first 5 episodes was sort of setting up and building up, and a lot of people are going to look back and say, well, why didn't they just start with the cast? Like, why didn't they just start at episode 6? But I think in hindsight, it was important for them to sort of build the characters. I think it was just because it was in the middle of the season. People didn't expect that because you have shows like The Crown where obviously they have casting changes in between seasons and it's not a huge deal. It was just jarring because it was in the middle of the season. It's like, wait, what? And some people didn't know it was coming. So.
That was a risk. I like that risk though.
It's risky, and at first I was like, should they have done it? And then the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah. I mean, it's in terms of telling a story, I think it's fine. I mean, you have a lot of movies out there that have time jumps in the movies. Some of the best epics of all time. You have casting changes, so it's something that we've seen before. I just don't think we've seen it in television because television usually you draw it out because there's so much time. There's never really been a need before to have a time jump like that. But I could see for this because they really would want the first season to end with the war actually starting. You kind of had to do that. So you want to start telling the story. If you're telling a story over, I guess it would end up being like 15-year time span, I think is what you're dealing with here, something like that. 15 years roughly, maybe a little more.
I'm nodding like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, 15, 20. I think it was actually probably 20 years. Yeah, something close to like 20 years. So if you're dealing with that sort of a time span, you don't have a choice. You have to kind of make those casting changes, especially because you have people who go from being children to being parents of people in their 20s. Like you have to change it.
To me, it makes it feel so much more real.
Yeah.
The history behind it. You know how they acted as kids, and the feud between them, which feels all the greater.
Exactly, because you didn't really get that in Game of Thrones. You just had stories about like where did the feuds come from, and as the show went along, you heard more and more. But now here, because you've actually seen where they're coming from, it makes what you're seeing all the more dramatic, because that these two people, Rhaenyra and Alicent used to be like really close friends and like childhood friends, and now their kids are going to be killing each other, and that makes it so dramatic.
It does, and I love that they have all the money they need. It's I believe $20 million per episode.
Sounds about
spent.
right.
So $200 million for the whole season, which I guess is nothing compared to Rings of Power. That's another story. So you have $20 million per episode. So you can get all the actors you want. You can get as much you want to put into the CGI, which has been incredible as well. So if they do a time jump again,
I love the dragon pit, by the way, from the last episode. You know what I'm talking about? During the coronation sequence, the coronation scene.
Yes,
because they do it in the dragon pit. I thought that was so well done.
That was very well done.
Yeah.
I guess all we have left off then is just emotionally. We've really delved into a lot of our feelings, but going into season 2, are you more excited now than you were when the season started? Of course.
No question.
Yeah, no question.
No question. The emotional, I guess you would call it like catharsis that I went through in the later episodes was something that I did not see coming.
And you gave this a 9.5.
Yeah, 9.5. I was
highest of praises.
Highest of praises, virtually perfect. I mean, because the last few episodes, which to me are the most important ones, were just pretty much perfect. As I thought about them, I went through them like there's really nothing you can change in this last few episodes. Little nitpicking things here and there, but especially, like I said, episode 8 and episode 10, those two were just peak level. You can give me the best of Game of Thrones, I would put those up there with them.
Holy crap. Yeah. This show has wowed me and amazed me. So I'm on board, and I mean, you're going to be coming back next season when we review this, of course, okay? Because you'll have the book knowledge, you'll have the non-Richard stare. Like, I'm more comfortable. It's great. So
just chiller set overall, yeah.
See, it's just great. All right, that has been our review of House of the Dragon Season 1. We loved it. We hope you loved it too. Comment down below, leave a subscribe, leave a like. Thank you for joining in. And that's Jordan for now. We'll see if he comes back for another review. No, don't you dare, Richard. Don't come into screen. Oh my, we have to end it now. Goodbye. No! No!